Greetings, welcome back to CS133, Backdoor Programming with Python. This is week 5 where we're going to go over some more advanced features of Python that you'll find useful for doing other pieces of coding, right? And the practical part of this as we go through this. So the first thing we're going to go over is date time, right? Date and time. Our objective is to understand how you can actually interact with the date and time, create it, grab the current, and so on. So the biggest thing will be your criteria is demonstrating using the print command to show the current date, getting the different pieces of it. So with our real quick example, if you remember from our imports, we are going to just import datetime. And remember, that means we need to use datetime every single time we want to actually have it. So from this, we're going to grab datetime. That'll give us access to the system because that's where this actually gets the datetime. So datetime.datetime.now, that .now gives us the date and time right now. So as we can see, I can print X, and it's kind of all over the place. That is the standard output that it will do. But you can grab different pieces of it, right? So if I want to get just the year, then I type in .year. Let's make this a little larger. So if I want just the year, I can get that. If I want the day, you have to convert stuff, but this will give you the actual day. So there's more. You can see that there's more in it. When you print X, it didn't actually print the day, right? It printed this string here. So again, that X holds a lot of information for the date time, which is why date time is its own variable type, right? It's its own variable type, like a string, like an integer, like a Boolean. It's its own data type. Now we can also create our own date time and say, all right, let's import the date time and let's put in today's date. That's not today's date, but you could see you could type in a date and create your own and use it later. Now, why do I show that? Because there's a few things that you can do, right? So let me full screen this one and make it bigger, because this is a good example of something like I've used it for. Now, normally what you do is you'd actually get the date time of the file, and you can do that, right? But there's not really a good file system to connect to because this is an emulation of Python. But if you had a computer, if you're doing this on a computer you're trying to run, you can actually grab the date time, the timestamp of when the file was created, modified, whatever. And you can all use Google to find that. But what I'm doing here is I'm just setting some date times, right? I'm setting some date times and basically saying, this one was made in 2019, this one was created in 2020, 2021, and I add them all to an array real quick. And this is kind of simulating, you can go to a folder, grab all of the files, and then get the date time from each of them, and it'll essentially be an array. So we're going to get the current date, and then we're going to go ahead and print it, right? So that's the current date, so we can see it is, as of this video, 6/10/2021. And then I'm going to loop through all the files, right? So this beginning, you have a sample folder. I get down to the folder. I have all the files in the folder. I'm going to loop through all the files. And basically, I'm saying if file I, so if the date, and this is why it's important that this is date time. You need to match them, right? This is why I showed you how to create a date time, because you can't compare date time to anything but date time, right? So the date time of the file, if it was before today, that file is too old, right? That file is too old. So as you print, do you see file 1 is too old? File 2, or file 0 being the fact that it's the first index. So the first file is too old, the second file is too old, and the third file is too old. But this file right here is not too old. And really what you would be doing here is this is why, again, I showed you how to create a date time. You would set a date time like, I want to find all the files that are older than 2 months ago, right? So you'd actually put in the date of 2 months ago. For now, I'm just what files could not actually been conceived, right? This file is actually created in the future if that's what we were doing. But the point is, right, you can do this, and I've done practical programming with this where you can get the date time and analyze files or whatever you're trying to look at and see if it's too old, too new. You can see if it's in a date range. You can create your own little search to see what files were created between this time and this time, all just based on the Python program that you've already learned. The key is you need to have them in the date time, right? So that's the point of this lesson, is understanding date time and how date time works and how you can compare it, right? So if the date time of the file is before, right, less than before the date time that you're selecting, in this case it's today, but then you do it. So you can write the logic. We've been over all the logic. Now you can do date time as well. So with that, there is a lot more, right? You'll probably see this. Again, the coding that we can do in Trinket is not that advanced. So this is another example of actually getting the actual date time and converting it to date time. Because remember, the important piece is they need to be date time, right? They need to be date time or it won't work. So if you need more interest, there's more codes and examples here. But really, I wanted to show you this because this might be something you could use in the practical programming later on in the future, knowing that it's there. So really, the big thing for you is understanding that date time is a variable type. Just like you can't compare strings to integers, you need date time to date time. How do you get the current date? And then really, how do you compare dates as you're going through that? So that was a big part of this lesson. With that, we'll go to the practice next. We'll see you next lesson.